Jared, welcome, man. Thanks for accepting my invitation.
It's only a pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. You look
Good to be here or there or wherever we are.
yeah,
Good to be
around.
talking to you.
Great. I mean, you look sharp, bro. You've always looked sharp. Actually, one of the first things that I wanted to talk to you about is kind of have this image of you the first time we met. I remember you being at the school. For people
Yeah.
who have no clue who Jared is and what is our relationship. We met in Italy when I was working there for an English school, and the first time I've seen you, man, you look like this prototype of the European man that I had in mind once I actually once I actually set the first uh, foot in Europe, and but that was the first time I actually seen someone so fully dressed as a proper gentleman, you know. And I was wondering, man, where do you take that from? Because do you have like an inspiration? The pipe thing, it's very you know, it's very original. But do you take it from like anywhere whatsoever?
I think it's probably a combination of factors. I partly just I kind of adopted a value of making an effort about I think it stems actually from sort of self-respect, kind of just making an effort about how you look. um, I I'm very creative, so I love colors and tones and fabrics, and I love lots of creative things, but for me clothing falls into the same way that I enjoy music or films. And I think things just resonate with me, and then I I personally enjoy it myself. So uh, I don't think I'm very good at. I don't have one specific sort of inspiration I follow. It's more um, that I just see things and I really like looking at them, and then I feel happy when I wear them. Um, yeah. So in its essence, I suppose that's where it comes from.
That's great, man. I mean, I admire you. I want to be you when I grow up. So I'm still, have this kind of project, Jared, 2025, heading that way, always forward. But that's very nice. That's very
Interesting
nice.
question.
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, this is something we never talked about, and I mean, there is not a person that looks at you and go, this guy is quite original. You stand out, man. You definitely stand out, and that's a nice thing. That's a very nice thing to just to be. So it's even nicer if it is like this mix of things you're talking about. It's not like you are trying to copy anyone, but it just comes from something inside, right? And you have this
Mm.
this very interesting group of hobbies you follow too, right? For
Mhm.
example, how far in the line of professionalism do you consider yourself a professional photographer, for example? Because you do enjoy taking photographs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I at one stage I considered myself a fully professional photographer.
That's
I
awesome.
um I was shooting for a lot of well-known brands. Um, Guess clothing, Nike, BP, vodka, Total, some uh, tequila brands, some champagne brands. So at that stage, I was, I suppose,
Fully
professional.
professional.
I was taking photos, and they were making adverts out of it.
I had no idea, bro. I had no
Mm.
idea. That's awesome.
So I did that for 4 years in Cape Town.
Wow. That was before we met then.
Yeah, yeah. And then I I'd always said that I wanted to. It was either going to be Italy or Spain that I wanted to live and move to for a year. I've wanted to live in Spain since I was 9. I'm not sure why. Um, and but also, I mean, my grand spent 10 years in Italy, in Florence. Uh, Her mother was Italian. I grew up with my grand trying to teach me Italian, which you all know didn't work very well. Um, but there was always a lot of that influence in our family through music, love of art, food. So I always felt a connection with it, and I really just wanted to go and submerge myself for a year.
All
And I
right.
picked the South because it's very traditional, which I wanted. I wanted the full-blooded uh, Italian feeling, and sure, we got it, didn't we?
We got it. Definitely got it. And I mean, I
Absolutely.
those two countries you've just mentioned, I think they fit very well in this description you gave me before of how you're attracted to just lively things, colors, and things like that,
Yeah.
right? I think
Yeah.
there's no why trying to explain the reason why you chosen these two countries to eventually live in, and then you
Yeah.
ended up in Italy and in the south
Yeah.
of Italy. Now, if you could try to explain to people why the south and not the north, for example, as a choice, because I think we kind
Yeah.
of know why I have,
What
or
it's like. Yeah.
yeah, right. But how would you put it? Like for people who don't know, in Italy, we can clearly spot a difference being in the
Yeah.
south and being in the north, right?
Yeah.
They even used to have some conflicts, and there are still like stains of this conflicts all around, right? If you talk to Italians,
Absolutely.
they will always have something to say about people from the
Mm.
south and people from the north, and sort of a
Yeah. Yeah.
stereotyping going on as well. But
Yeah.
your choice was based in the idea of what that happens in the south, but you don't really see in the north of Italy.
I think it was when I used the word traditional earlier, um, in that the North, much more so than the South, and to even a greater degree, quite a few other countries in Europe where I've lived, and here in South Africa, um, there's such a focus on speed and function all the time. Um, and I think some of the things that really struck me about the South, which is a bit different to the North, and being in a smaller town, but even Bari and the bigger cities there were the same. For example, how everything just closes for siesta is just it's a concept that I'd heard of but never experienced anywhere else. Um, there's just a greater orientation towards enjoying life, enjoying spending time with people, um, and less of a rush. Everything's slowed down. Time is its own beast
Yeah,
down there, and no one's even certain about it. So it's definitely a general relaxedness and an orientation um, towards focusing on enjoying life and getting value out of it rather than necessarily rushing to the next thing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
yeah,
totally agree with this. This is a very good description. Now, for people who don't know, in Italy, and I
yeah,
think we can definitely put this high in the list of cultural shocks one might have,
yeah,
ending up in the south of Italy and trying to get something to drink or eat around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Because chances are you're not going to find it, especially if you are in a small town, right?
no,
you're definitely not going to find it. So they basically close everything from around what, midday, 1 o'clock, 1 o'clock,
1 o'clock, yeah.
1 o'clock till 5, 6 ish,
Yeah.
something like that. And that is something that you don't really see anywhere else, right? I don't know in Spain, because you have the siesta thing. Probably you see that somewhere in Spain.
Yeah.
But that is an interesting lifestyle. I wouldn't necessarily say that makes every single one of them less stressed out, because I've seen some stressed out Italian, but it's certainly a different concept, right? In terms of business, because, we're always trying to work more and more and more, and they do work a lot there, but there is some sort of respect surrounding the idea of calmness and just easiness and taking your time to be with your family or your friends, right?
Friends,
which is just insanely lovely and beautiful.
Absolutely.
Now, you're talking about the slowing down thing, right? The calmness and everything. I had to get to Italy to know of the slow food movement, because I didn't know about it. Was that something that called your attention, that draw your attention, or something like that? Because right next to us, next to Barletta, there was a city that you simply loved, and you might as well talk a little bit about this city. Was known for being a slow food city in Italy, right? So what's your take on that? Are you still planning to retire and go over there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think about Trani every day. I think just on the topic of food is that while we kind of talking about it, apart from the fact that it's all bloody delicious and you eat far too much of it, it's very cool the way that meals are. I don't know about Brazil, but they're about a lot. Well, if you think about meals and sort of break them down, first the actual preparation of the food and the care and the sheer enjoyment and pleasure, and somehow scientific method in the chaos that goes into it. It's like the meal begins when the food starts being prepared, and that's often hours or days before. And then the way that meals are just such a social affair is really cool and really special. And the fact that you can hardly walk home afterwards because your stomach is so full is also part of it. But yeah, it's like food and meals take on such a broader meaning and value there, but it ties into this overriding theme of focusing on really enjoying things in life and enjoying spending time with people. So certainly, and then Trani, I'm not even 100% sure what it is about that place. It's partly that it's not too big. It's obviously beautiful, and the harbor and the parks and the little swimming spots and Vecchio al Mare and all these special things. It's sort of everything all in one, and it's not terribly touristy, which I really like. So an hour from an international airport, kind of all falling together, isn't it?
Yes, it is, man. You let me know in a couple of years. I mean, not a couple, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna take a bit longer, I guess.
I got to pretend to work between now and then, yeah.
But there's something. I mean, for anyone who goes there to Trani is a beautiful city, but something caught you for sure. Like another mix of things, right? You are all about the little things that you spot and you just fall in love with them. It's a beautiful city for sure. Now, talking about this, you said before that eating in Italy is basically a social experience, right?
Yeah.
Um, I remember Oba inviting me
Mm-hmm.
for the holidays, right, in his
Mm-hmm.
house.
Mm-hmm.
And man, those were probably the happiest and the happiest couple of days I had in Italy. Just food wise, and of course, as they call it, atmosphere wise,
Yeah.
right? Because they were
Yeah.
so, you could definitely experience the Italian family, which is something that I kind of understand, because
Mm.
uh, I my family comes from a lineage of Italian
Yeah.
immigrants,
Yeah.
right? So we kind of get that feeling. But then again, my family was from the north of Italy, and I've
Yeah.
experienced the
Near
south.
Venice.
Yeah, definitely, yeah, the Trento region, right?
Yeah.
And I experienced the south. So just because the south has so much more of Brazil that they think of, so it's a very strange mix of things there too. But going back for the Oba thing, Osvaldo,
Mm.
right, our friend, um, I would like to ask you first, uh, is there a record you've actually counted of hours you've spent on a table sitting down and having a meal? Because I guess for me, it was that day in his house, and I swear to God, we sat down at around 4:30 in the afternoon, and we left
Yeah.
around 9, I guess, man. I mean, I might be exaggerating, but it was insane. Just the amount of food that would
Probably.
come, and
Probably not. I mean, I could. It's definitely at least 3.5 hours. Um, that's. I'm pretty certain for that at least.
yeah,
Um, it's also. It's. I mean, you eat slowly, which
mm,
is sounds silly, but it's so. Um, yeah, 3.5 hours easily. I think if I had gone any longer, I probably would have ended up in a coma. So for some
yeah,
self-preservation.
yeah. And I mean, if that has never happened, I don't know what has ever happened, because I swear to God, there's only so many, like focaccias one can eat, and they do try to push that limit.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing. I also really enjoyed the style of food in terms of it being smaller bits of lots and lots and lots of different flavors,
No.
which is, I'm not sure about Brazil, but in South Africa, it's a relatively, in terms of normal historical cultural South African food, that's quite rare. It will generally be for dinner, maybe a roast with some vegetables,
Yeah,
or something like that. But certainly in Italy, there were 3 or 4 different tastes to start with, and then the next course as well, and so on for the next 35 courses.
yeah,
And yeah, so it's also it's a really nice, interesting
yeah.
way in terms of food and flavors. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
it seems like almost the whole process of having a meal in Italy it was first planned to actually let people chat and enjoy that
yeah,
moment. Because I mean,
yeah,
just think about it, right? You got the appetizers, and
yeah,
this is something interesting to tell people, right? And I'm still gonna suck for a long time doing this sort of podcast slash interviews, because I didn't even tell people where you come from. I mean, we're talking with Jared from South Africa, right? And then of course we have a lot to talk about difference between South Africa and Italy and even Brazil, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
meals are one of them, right? And then
yeah,
probably you already told us that is different over there in South Africa, but in Italy you would have appetizers, then a first course, which
yeah,
mainly we're talking about here, pasta or
mm,
pizza or carbohydrates, right? Is what they say. and
yeah,
then you go for the second course, different dishes, You know, there is a moment in between these two courses, and then it's your protein or like some sort of
Yeah.
meat, right? And then you have dessert, coffee or digestivo, right? Which is
Hmm.
your limoncello or amaro or
Yeah. Yeah.
something like that. And
Yeah.
that's for itself, it's a long process. And just
Yeah.
imagine being there with your friends and chatting. I mean, just a meal gives you a lot of time to catch up with people, and that is a fantastic aspect of Italy in terms of
I,
just having a
I
meal.
mean, I think we were speaking about the siesta earlier, and that's sort of obviously the big meal being at lunch. Everything's structured towards making that possible. Whereas here, where maybe you'll stop for an hour at most, most business work situations, so you don't have time for something like that. Whereas, I don't know if it was the chicken or the egg, which one came first, but they work very well together because you need the best part of an afternoon to do that, and then have a nap afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, we don't see food the same way. It's almost something you have to do in terms
yeah,
of just I need fuel to work. And for them is
yeah,
way more than that, right?
yeah,
The whole
absolutely,
package comes with it, and that's
yeah.
beautiful. Now, so we've been talking a lot of great things about Italy, right? But we don't really have to advertise the country, so we can even tell people a little bit about the main I wouldn't say issues, but things we've faced over there, especially on our arrival, because you're just getting to know and understand how everything works, right? Was there something in particular you thought kind of tough to deal with or to cope with in terms of culture or the way people behave? Because it is different. We know everybody is different, but they have their specificalities. Could we say that?
Not intricacies, idiocracies, I think it's called
Yeah.
anyway. Whatever it is, I know what you mean. Um, some of the interesting things, the way people drive.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
We'll just
Oh
go
my
straight there.
God. Yeah. Like
I
come
am.
straight from like a very like a carnage video game sort of thing. Scary. It is scary, bro.
Grand Theft Auto.
Well, yeah.
Um,
I mean,
I
on the hitting old women, old lady parts too. Grand Theft Auto. It's like,
I never understood why cars had bumpers until I moved to Barletta, and I realized that it's so that when you reverse, you know when you're going into the car behind you and when you must stop. People very liberally use their bumpers when it comes to parallel
wow,
parking, which is
wow.
lovely.
I mean, it's
Um,
Mr. Bean style, right? Have you ever seen Mr. Bean
yeah,
parking his car? On the other side of the lane, obviously, right? Because
yeah.
is there a parking spot there? Screw you! I
Uh,
want that parking spot. It's insane, man.
um, a funny thing the first week that I was there was whenever I got a coffee or cafe, I uh, I tipped the person who served it for me, and I got a few very peculiar. I kind of got the change given back to me, and then I gave it back to them, and then it came back and um, it's the first place I've lived where people don't really tip
Mm-hmm.
the way that they do elsewhere. So that took me a little while to figure out why they looked confused. Um, then I realized you just get charged for sitting down, which
Yeah.
is a great way of doing it as well. Um, a thing that really struck me was the first few days walking around. I initially thought a lot of people were really angry very often because they're there is only one volume of conversation, and it's loud and it's vigorous, and the hands are going. And I,
Oh man.
I really, for a couple days, thought that there are a lot of like pissed off or frustrated people here, because people are casually speaking on the corner of the road and they're going at each other, and then I just realized that's just the way of standard way of speaking.
Yeah,
So it wasn't really an issue. It was just a bit of an adjustment, um,
yeah, for sure.
which I came to appreciate eventually. Um, I think being in Barletta, where there is not a lot of English spoken, I remember the first day I arrived, I didn't even know the place existed till I arrived there. And I was walking around trying to find somewhere where I could find Wi-Fi
Oh
or
god.
Wi-Fi. And yeah, it didn't turn out that well. Um, unsuccessful completely.
Yeah, man.
Um, what?
I mean,
I mean, I've never, yeah,
just the Wi-Fi was a very, very
yeah,
tough thing for me too, because I mean, we Jerry and I, right? We got this job at an English school where you didn't you didn't have much of a um, uh, like a instruction given of what to do, where to go,
yeah,
and how to do it. And
yeah,
if you don't speak Italian, if you don't know the reality of the city and the place, you might
yeah,
be surprised. Uh, uh, I mean, on the 21st century, of how hard it is to find the basic communication, like ways to,
yeah,
to just tell people that you are okay and you've survived the trip and stuff like that, right? I mean, I that was hard for me too, and to adjust your phone and get internet in your phone, and it wasn't
yeah.
uh, very easy. Of
No,
course, once you have friends, everything changes, right? The guys, they basically
yeah,
they help you so much. They gave us probably everything we needed, like in a silver plate, right? It was
yeah, yeah,
so nice of
absolutely.
them. They were there whenever we needed them, but at
Yeah,
first you were kind of on your own, and that was a bit
yeah,
scary, right?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, the other thing I very quickly learned to not trust is the sign of on the front of a bus.
What do you mean by that, man?
So usually the front of the bus tells you where the bus is going,
Oh
and
man.
I quite quickly came to learn that you shouldn't take too seriously what's written on the front of the bus after
It's just a weird
jumping in a
thing not
bus.
to take seriously, right?
It's part of the South. After jumping in a bus that was meant to take me where I was meant to be going, and 40 minutes later, realized I was 40 minutes in the opposite direction in a small town that had a bus arrive once every 3 hours and no train system. So, and then I chatted about it, and it's pretty, it's much more advisable to ask the bus driver where the bus is going.
which
So,
which is not
uh,
easy for someone who does not speak Italian, right?
no, when you've just arrived.
But
Um,
that, how many times have you got lost? Twice.
Twice,
And that was
yeah.
not that's not that bad. Could be
Then
worse.
I ended up in Cerignola once.
I
um,
have a feeling you don't want to end up in Chirinola, probably.
no, 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 not really. Um, but I found people incredibly, incredibly, incredibly friendly, even with the lack of initial communication abilities.
Yeah.
Um, I think, look, the South is a bit more run down than the North. There's no doubt about it. Um,
Hmm.
but you learn to love it for that, for the texture that it brings. I always loved the ways that you could be on a beautiful stretch of beach, and then, you know, 3 meters away there'd be a broken down wall falling apart, full of graffiti, and it seemed so juxtaposed, but really, um, really cool. And then Grazia told me something about explaining the South, which is probably the best thing I've ever learned.
Sure.
Is that you cry when you arrive, and then you cry again when you leave.
Oh, that's so
And I think that just sums it up completely. Yeah?
couldn't be more true, right? It
No,
was tough to depart.
yeah, I couldn't put it much better than that.
Yeah, because there's a little bit there's a quite a bit of a struggle, right? Kind of a struggle that you might not be used to in a really well in structured big city, right? But
Yep.
you learn to appreciate the good things that come along with that struggle, right? Maybe not having
Yeah.
Wi-Fi everywhere you go, maybe because
Yeah.
they do give you more time to do things that, you know, being any different you wouldn't do, right? Or maybe even
Yeah.
appreciate a little bit more people,
Mm,
right? People that are around, just because
mm,
you don't have to be at that specific time with your phone or anything like that, which is something
yeah.
everybody's talking about now. How
Yeah.
the phone and the just uh, 4G 5G has changed our lives in ways that are not always for the better in terms of communication with other human beings, right? And
Yeah.
that's and
Yeah. Yeah.
that initial struggle is something you go through in
Mm,
I went through in Barletta, and I learned that well, just change that for actual people and learn to listen,
yeah.
communicate, and to enjoy that
Absolutely.
cafe moment, you know, that
Mm,
happens like 5 times a day. Thank God, that was beautiful.
yes.
What about the cafe thing? Because that was something that was a big one for me. I mean, we literally had 10 minutes of any sort of break from work, right? And you
Yeah.
get a message or something. Are you free? Are you free?
Yeah.
Let's have a cup of coffee, right? And the
Mm,
cup of coffee was literally a gathering of you wouldn't imagine, but it could be more than 6 people
easily.
for
Yeah.
whatever were your 15 minutes you got, and that
Yeah.
was good enough for just
Yeah.
see them and say, hey, how what is up, you know?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about that? Was that something that kind of, you know, made you feel different in any way? Because I think that was something that really I got it tattooed from that period in Italy. It's
Yeah.
like, man, I wish I could have that moment every single
Yeah.
afternoon anywhere in the world I live. And you come back home and you
Yeah.
realize, man, nobody really works like that around here. It's kind of
Yeah.
frustrating.
It's great that little touching of base throughout the day, even just for a few minutes on the run, and then other people are walking past and they come and join. And I think I love the coffee culture there.
Yeah.
Um, in some ways, it seems less deliberate in that, I don't know, here if you sit down for a cup of coffee, it's usually a big cup of coffee, not an espresso. But
Mhm.
there it's just so streamlined, but more often, and it's just a thing. And it's funny how such a short couple of minutes um, can be so fun and meaningful, and then everyone's off to whatever they're off to, and then another coffee a bit later or something.
Which
Very, very, very unique.
which you
Um,
couldn't have in a bigger city, right, Jared?
yeah,
So Barletta
yeah,
was just that great size of a city, and of course,
perfect size.
everybody was kind of living around in the center of the city, right? So that helped.
Yeah,
Uh, but
yeah,
uh, but but we had like meeting spots,
yeah.
bars
Ballara.
that they would call bars there, right? Which you it's the
Yeah,
place where you get your coffee in Italy is actually a bar. Of course, you can get your coffee, but then you can get your beer or whatever.
yeah,
But it was so nice, so nice, such a nice spot that square
yeah.
over Bar Lara, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know why I've just thought about it, but there was a vending machine just around the corner,
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the day I walked up to it. Never seen this before anywhere. They literally sell all the ingredients you need to make a pasta in the vending machine. So there's mozzarella, there's pasta, there's tomatoes. And I just stood there for a moment the first time I saw it. And I was like, I must be in Italy, because where else are you going to randomly find a vending machine with all the ingredients for a pasta?
Pasta. Yeah, man, that's rich. That's rich. You wouldn't see that anywhere else in the world. I mean, there is this coffee culture that I'm a like a big fan of coffee. I might be addicted, that's for sure. But I had a whole ritual that concerned having coffee around me and a book or something to read, right? And when we're talking a cup of coffee, I was more like a mug of coffee, right?
Yeah.
Which they call Americano over there, right? The coffee style, let's say, the type of coffee, right? So I remember when I worked in Andria, and I worked in Andria for a year, three times a week in the morning.
Yeah.
We would wake up at like 6 o'clock. The school Verde, something, right? Giuseppe Verdi, was that the name of the school?
Something like that.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
went there once. Yeah.
Yeah, once. Good for you. Anyway, we can get into that later.
Yes.
And of course.
A side note, I just remember the teacher that worked there that was always trying to invite the English teachers away for the weekend.
Yeah.
But that's a side note.
Yeah, exactly. I actually had a couple of pleasant meals in the house of one of these teachers. Yeah, with the whole family, you know. That's a great thing. That's something, you know, they would invite you in. I mean, hey, you're not from here. You're from Brazil. You're from South Africa. Come to my house and meet my kids. You know, it's all right. Okay, that's great. That's fantastic. Let's do it. But anyway, I eventually
back to your coffee culture.
Yeah, I eventually became friends with the barista over there, or this coffee house, this coffee shop, this bar right in front of the school. And I would go there every morning because I had to wait like around 40 minutes or something before my first lesson there. And of course I would have some sort of breakfast, which for people who doesn't know, breakfast in Italy is basically a croissant, right, which they call cornetto, right, and a cup of coffee or
Cafe.
No, I mean the other
cappuccino.
one. Thank you, cappuccino.
So cappuccino was only really for breakfast or very occasionally late at night, but no in between.
For some strange reason, if you order a cappuccino at a bar after lunch, they would throw hot water in your face. I don't know, something very bad will happen. There is something about this that is just forbidden. It's an untold rule that if you meet an Italian, you will eventually know that. But
I think it's got something to do with the milk.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make. It makes sense. It's probably not the greatest thing for digestion or something, right? But you know, in a free country, you would think, I want a cappuccino. I do believe some people will actually tell you, nope, I'm not selling cappuccino.
They'll tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. You freaking insane, right? But okay, let me try to get over with the coffee ritual thing.
The breakfast of champions that you were telling
exactly.
us about.
But then, of course, I had 40 minutes, and I mean, an espresso in Italy is literally this much. They even have a smaller version, right? Which is the I'm forgetting.
Caffè lungo.
Ristretto, no, ristretto. I'm talking about the ristretto, right? I remember Oba enjoyed the ristretto. He would always order ristretto, and it's this much coffee, man. It's like a shot of caffeine straight to your bloodstream. But anyway, so I would order Americano, right? Because I was new. I was new, young, and stupid. But the guy would look at me and would go, well, okay, you're not from around here. But they would give me, this look, right? This look like you're not doing the right thing to your life, by ordering Americano. And eventually, just because I needed time, so how many espressos do I need to have to read a couple of pages? I need to sit down and I need to stay here for almost 40 minutes. So, but anyway, eventually this guy would greet me in the morning and say, buongiorno Pedro, come va? Vorresti la tua acqua sporca? He would say, would you like your dirty water today as well? So it was just call it straight in my face that what I was drinking was dirty water. The place was crowded and he would go like, dirty water. This guy drinks dirty water. And I would go, man, hey, guy knows me. I feel great. I'm like popular around here. The guy,
I'm a local.
The guy who drinks dirty water, he's not from here and he drinks dirty water. So actually that speck of bullying helped me to pass from Americano to actual espresso and man, do I love a good espresso now.
Has it stuck with you?
Wow, God, I just love it. I mean, I tried every time I have espresso around here. I try to remember, or I try to think what Grazia would say, because Grazia was a girl that has never probably fully enjoyed a cup of espresso in her life. She had such high standards for espresso that my tongue will never understand what she was actually looking for, because I would have this great espresso and she would go like, and I was trying to just go along and say, oh yeah, that's. I was like having the espresso of my life, ooh, yeah, what the hell is that? Where did they get this from? It was great though. Yeah, exactly. Can you find decent espresso where you live?
It's not all that easy. Espresso is very rare here. Most people are deep into the dirty water.
Yeah.
But I've definitely carried it with me. I very rarely have dirty water. Occasionally I'll have a cappuccino with breakfast. But I've got a good proper coffee machine, and I managed to get some good beans. Actually, some illy beans.
Wow, awesome.
So but still not as good. I don't know if it's the sunshine or the air or what it is, but it's just still not the same thing. In fact, I mean, I've been back to Italy every summer since I left, and that's the first thing I do. I get off that plane and order a cafe. I can literally feel it going into my body, and then I feel human again.
Let your brain know where you are now.
Yeah.
And the weirdest thing here is that we should have no excuses, right, man? Because I remember this friend of mine that told me a story. Oh man, he's another big fan of coffee, right? So he went to Italy and he brought home some coffee from Italy, right?
Yeah.
I think it was like Lavazza or one of the big brands,
Yeah.
I don't know exactly which one. Yeah. And then he actually I asked him to bring me one pack of whatever was the coffee he would find there. And then we were having we were preparing that coffee in the mocha, as
all proper,
as traditional as we could do, as we could, and and we came to realize just by reading the packaging that the beans came from fucking Brazil.
Of course they did.
Exactly.
I know.
Which probably you have some experience with that, because you have probably many brands that get beans from South Africa too, right? So we should have
nearby,
excuses.
yeah, Kenya, Ethiopia, both very famous for their
Exactly.
coffee. We
Yeah.
South
And
Africa's full of their coffee beans.
that's what they have there. So what is the deal? What is the deal with
I
that?
think I think those brands that you mentioned, Lavazza and Illy, I think they roast them in Italy. So even though the beans are coming from Brazil, and I don't know, probably some from Kenya and Ethiopia, the actual, because I've looked into it a little bit, and I think the roasting is actually done there. There must be something to do with that. I've had one espresso in South Africa that came close to, and that was actually a set of beans that someone had roasted themselves.
Yeah,
So,
man.
but I think I don't know about Brazil if espressos are popular, but here they really not popular. So there isn't really the correct beans
I
and
mean,
roasting on the market
yeah.
for that because people don't really do this much here.
Yeah, what I found around here when it comes to espresso is that you go to whatever is the bar that calls itself close to a Italian coffee bar, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
and you will get what in Italy, even though they have the machinery and everything, you see those
Mm.
powerful monsters there that you
Yeah,
can
the
that
spaceships.
yeah, exactly. Spaceships, basically. They are beautiful, by the way. I would love to have one of
Yeah.
those in my house. But
Yes.
you order espresso, and you would get what in Italy is basically a lungo, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they will add water to that. Because I think the Brazilian mentality asks for or would probably eventually complain of how much actual product you would get from
Yeah. They
espresso, which is
receive.
tiny, right?
Yeah.
And maybe price wise you would go like,
Yeah.
what am I paying for, right? But
Yeah.
you don't appreciate the actual quality of it or something like that. So i feel
Yeah.
i feel like Brazilians are, when it comes to coffee, they would definitely complain.
Yeah.
They would definitely complain of the price versus the amount of coffee you're actually getting
Yeah. Yeah.
from what would be an original espresso. So espressos here,
Yeah.
they are just what a lungo would be in Italy,
Yeah.
and you lose it. You lose it. It's too much water.
Yeah. It is too
Right.
much dirty water.
Exactly. Too much dirty water. Close to an Americano is our espresso here, basically. um, Man, let's tap into language a little bit, because I want to use this space that I'm trying to create here to talk to my
Yeah.
friends and to discuss culture in their countries versus whatever we were before that.
Yeah.
But I think language is a good one to tap in, and
Mm.
South Africa could not be
Mm.
richer in terms of language, I guess, man. Could
Yeah.
you please let us know what is the situation when it comes to your official language over there, and how kind of that
Official
came
are
to
they?
be? Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I remember you telling me. That's why I'm coming up with the subject.
Yeah. Um, you're gonna laugh at my answer. We've either got 7 or 9 official languages, and that answers part of both of your questions.
I know, man. I
Um,
know. Yeah.
we've got, so according to our constitution, it's either 7 or 9. Um, 4 of them are 4 or 5 are widely spoken. Um, and then as you get higher up on the list, it kind of tapers off, and that's partly why I don't even know exactly how many we have. But I would say 90 between those 4 languages, which are, so basically, let me name them. Of course, English, which is probably spoken by about fluently by only about maybe 20% of our population.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah.
Um, Afrikaans, which is a derivative of Dutch, a combination of Dutch and French, and some Zulu actually, and then Zulu, which is broadly speaking a tribal language. Zulu is probably spoken fluently by about at least 30% of our population, if not more, maybe 40. And Xhosa, which is similar to Zulu. So in the sense that if you speak one, you can understand the other, but there's pronunciation and click differences, and there are different words. Considering that only 10% of the South African population is European, and so the most widely spoken languages in this country would be Zulu and Xhosa, certainly, in terms of fluency. English is the main language in that it is the international language. It's the language that all our signs are in, for example. It's instructions on things when you buy them, and so on and so forth. Most 90% of advertising is in English. So it is in that sense, it's the most dominant language. And basically English and Afrikaans are spoken by almost all Europeans in South Africa, close to fluently. And then apart from that, there's Sotho, Tswana, Pedi, Basotho, and there might be one or two others that I can't remember. Those are spoken by really small groups of people.
Wow.
So it's, yeah, I speak English, Afrikaans. I grew up speaking English. I speak Afrikaans and I speak Zulu. So at school, you have to learn two languages. You have to learn English, and then I'm not certain. It's been a while since I was in school. It used to be you had to learn English and Afrikaans, and you could take Zulu if you wanted to. I'm not sure now if the second language option is either Zulu or Afrikaans. Yeah.
Now, which one of these you've mentioned has the clicking thing when it comes to?
Mostly Xhosa.
Yeah. Is there any chance you know a sentence or a word that involves clicking? Because I think that is fascinating.
Cabello.
What was that?
Cabello.
I got it now. Now I got.
Do you want to give it a crack?
There is no way you can do that. Okay, come on. Yeah, sure. It's slow motion now. Do it again. I'll try to.
Cabello. Yeah, you got it done.
It's so subtle. It's so subtle, isn't it?
Cabello.
Bro, what does it mean? I'm not gonna be able to reproduce that in any way, I guess.
Means Thursday.
Awesome, man. I think that is fascinating. I mean, I've seen videos of people communicating, doing that, and wow, it just
it's
really. That's the delay talking. Now I was just saying that it blows my mind how rich a language can be, right? In terms of the most diverse ways people find to communicate. Go ahead, sorry.
And so just talking about language, I mean, languages are obviously always connected to the cultures that they've originated from. And one of the things I appreciate most about the Zulu language is the thought that goes into names, and not even official names, like nicknames as such, which comes through in the language. So you'll often have people, if you were to translate the name, it would be like the one we've been waiting for, or the last one, or
that's so apt.
the one that ended our troubles, or I've got a Zulu name because where I part of where I grew up was on a farm, and for the first, well, when I moved back from the States, from the age of like 4 to 10, I spent most of my time with two Zulu boys because I was on a farm about an hour away from our nearest neighbors. So there weren't a lot of people around. And I learned Zulu obviously through them. And they named me after the river that ran through the farm. The name is Umsuluzi. That's the name of the river. And they named me after the river because I always used to run around as a child. I'd never walk anywhere. I'd always run to wherever I was going. And I asked them about it one day, and they said, well, the river runs all year round. It doesn't stop outside of the rainy season. And so
just
we
like
thought it
Jared.
was like you. So that, I mean,
So
it's a
beautiful,
strange
man.
thing, but when I think of the language, that's one of the first things that I really appreciate about how they use the language. And Afrikaans is a really interesting language. It's quite similar to Dutch.
Yeah.
But in Old Dutch, basically a Dutch that, as Dutch was, say, 1700s, that never really kept developing because languages are obviously always growing and evolving. And kind of, if you had to drop a language off on an island and then go back to that island 200 years later,
Would have
in a
changed.
fashion, that's what happened.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great idioms in Afrikaans. Afrikaans is very descriptive in that way, and one of my favorite ones. I'll tell you in Afrikaans, and then I'll translate it in English to you.
Go ahead.
So in Afrikaans it is toe het die tweede perd derde gekom.
All right.
So anyway, what it means is then the second horse came third. And it's speaking about a race, and it's a way of describing something that there is just no way of describing really what's happened. It's just, and so you say, and then the second horse came third. And it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite Afrikaans ways of explaining things.
There is no way the people who came up with that were not in an acid trip.
Yeah, at least.
Oh man,
it's fantastic. So we do have and I mean, moving about generally in the city or wherever you are, you'll normally at least hear 3 or 4 different languages, definitely 3 different languages around you all the time. So, and people also really appreciate when you can speak, a language that would probably be their first language from home. So I really appreciate being able to do that. And it's very rich in that sense.
yeah.
Obviously, with great language and cultural diversity also becomes great unknowns and misunderstandings because it's a very diverse country. So there's not many people that can speak all of like the 3 or 4 dominant. So the top 4 languages in this country, if you had to put them together, but if you can speak all 4 of them, you can speak to easily 95, maybe 98% of people in this country between those 4 languages. But there's not many people who can speak all of them. So it also creates confusion and misunderstanding sometimes, which is interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, Brazil is a huge country. Somehow we have only one official language, which is Portuguese, and there is still so much confusion and misunderstanding. Now, is there a specific region or something you would go to that you can basically beforehand say, well, I know if I go there, people are not going to get me because they mostly speak this or that? Or do you see this still kind of clans, or how could you put it, tribes, right? Are there regions that are more concentrated in one tribe?
In general, not so much. You got to remember that Zulu and Xhosa, in terms of, let me start this way. So generally in rural areas, and depending on the generations, of course. So our generation and younger, in terms of people who haven't grown up speaking English at home, many of them have learned it at school. So the level of English is kind of starting to grow exponentially in this country, but certainly in rural areas. We don't have a great education system here in rural areas. So you know that if you're going into rural areas, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to run into a whole lot of people that can't really speak English. So I would say it's more dependent on sort of the rural urban separation. And then there are also different, we call them provinces or states, different provinces in South Africa. And there's some that are, so I'm in KwaZulu-Natal, which means Kwa means the place and Zulu means Zulu. So it's known affectionately as the kingdom of the Zulu, the place of the Zulu. So the province I'm in is like the epicenter of Zulu culture in South Africa. It's always been a Zulu area. And then if you go to the Eastern Cape, for example, you won't meet anyone that speaks Zulu because they're all Xhosa. But if you're a Zulu person and you go there, you can get by in conversation. So I mean, that's quite a big division. There's also been a lot of rural-urban migration and backwards and forwards. So it has become pretty spread out. And then with technology, social media, and all of these things, everyone's exposed to so many languages.
Yeah.
So there are very few areas where you would say, I know specifically if I go there. It would mostly be the areas where these minority languages are spoken, like Tswana or Pedi, where there's really not a lot of people that speak them, or Sotho. If you go up north in South Africa, I'm on the East Coast at the moment, sort of in the middle of South Africa, right on the East Coast. If you go up north, there's areas where people speak Sotho and Pedi, and if they didn't speak English, we would not be able to communicate.
Wow.
So yeah, but it's increasingly becoming sort of more diluted as this does.
Yeah. I really appreciate this kind of information, man, because I get the feeling, and I think you probably agree, that people know so little about Africa in general, right? I mean, let's not even get into the geography thing that people around mention Africa as basically a country. Realize it's actually a continent, right? Isn't that a common thing, right? You see people mentioning Africa like Africa, what, the country? No, there's no such thing, right? Now,
absolutely.
Now, and this variety, this richness of language, right? You basically lived that in South Africa, right? Having basically living in a country with 7 official languages, but then you got to Italy, and you came to realize that Italian would not be the only challenge, if you know what I mean. For people who maybe some people from the region where I live understand this a little bit better, because we still have something in the south of Brazil that is called the Italian. Italian is a dialect. It's a dialect that was basically a mix of dialects from everyone who came from different parts of Italy back in the day, you know, and then it all kind of got together and composed this different dialect, right? Because basically when Italians immigrated from Italy to Brazil, there was not yet a official Italian language in Italy, right? And right now in Italy, they have more than 600 living dialects, or I think they don't even like to call them dialects. It's language that they speak. Most of it is not written, and that's why they use that mainly as an oral thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In the city we lived in, and basically the region where we lived, where is composed of three cities, right? We had the Barletta in the middle, then Trani and Andria,
Yeah.
and they are cities that are like 10 minutes by car or train apart from each other, and anywhere you would go, if you
Yeah.
wanted to communicate in the dialect of the city, nobody would understand you, right?
Yeah.
They both had they
They all had their own.
the three of them had their own dialect going on, right? And they were
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
different. And that just
Yeah.
blew my mind back then when I realized that, right? It's so rich. It's really, really
And
amazing.
when you're trying to learn Italian or communicate, and you're doing it partly through trying to follow conversations that are going on around you, this
If you
throws
don't,
you out completely.
you wouldn't know which is which if you don't know Italian very well. If they are
Yeah.
speaking Barletano, for example, right? Sheketsa vu, sheketsti. It was pretty
It's
nice. Uh,
it's amazing. Actually, the language and way of life there led me to start reading a book while I was there about time, and how all societies view time differently, and how time is kind of interwoven into language or vice versa. And I can't remember what it was, but I remember reading about a few dialects in Sicily where the future tense did not exist in the dialect.
whoa, whoa.
So
So
everything was spoken about in like kind
present,
of like a present tense.
yeah. But you know what? You actually can express in Italian, right? The same thing in the present, mentioning
Yeah,
the future, right? You don't
yeah,
really have to use the future, which is something that I think most romantic language share. You kind of can do that in Portuguese as well.
okay,
So I don't know to which extent, but there is, right? We have in Portuguese and Italian, we have a future form, right?
yeah.
Now probably that dialect there didn't have it at all, and that's
Wasn't necessary.
kind of poetic, right?
Mm,
I mean, the future is now, if you think about it.
exactly.
Yeah, future is
That's
now.
what they were saying. Excuse the pun.
I got it. I got it. That's pretty nice. So going back to South Africa, right?
Yeah,
Again, trying to understand a little bit more your country, because honestly, man, I
yeah,
think people have, including me, of course, we haven't not really grasped into the reality of what
mm,
is South Africa,
yeah,
and compared to Africa, the continent. Okay, people, Africa, the
mm,
continent.
mhm,
Um,
yeah,
can you tell us, for example, just to get this stereotype of, if you set a foot in Africa, a lion's gonna eat your head. Where where do you find the
lions.
the whole Lion King shebang over there? Where would you have to go to actually see giraffes and elephants and lions? I know you've recorded videos and beautiful videos of giraffes, I think, around where you lived. I think it was your
Yeah,
farm,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But where
Mm.
where is that? Or it is really well spread around the continent?
Mm. So, like, the continent's so diverse. I mean, we're speaking, if you go right up north, um, if you think about Morocco or Sudan or somewhere like that,
Hmm.
everything's completely different to South Africa in terms of culture, language, geography, wildlife, environment. You
Yeah.
might as well be going between Armenia and South Africa, or Armenia and Brazil. It's that diverse. I would say Southern Africa
Mhm.
is very similar in terms of the main industries: mining, tourism, agriculture. Um, in terms of wildlife, we term it wildlife. Basically, the uh, the animals. A lot of the same animals are indigenous to the area. Um, in South Africa, we have a mixture basically of two places where you would find such an occurrence of a of a wild animal like that, it would be state reserves. We call them game reserves, which you get either state or private. States are run by the government. Privates are where people own it themselves and tourists come and stay and so on. In both of, and there's a lot of both of them. For example, I'm in Durban. I probably have to drive about, I'm almost in the city center. It's a relatively big city, a couple million people. I could drive 30 minutes and find such a place where these animals are roaming freely, in the sense of it not being a zoo or anything like that, and spread all over South Africa game reserves. Obviously, historically, the animals just used to roam everywhere, but that can't happen anymore. But they're indigenous here. I mean, the farm I grew up on, we had rhino, elephants, leopard, and in that situation, I'd walk out my front door and I could see them sometimes 200 meters away, because it was all just, nature around us. They roamed. We had the elephants come through the garden a few times and things like that. So in those sorts of spaces, it's absolutely common and normal.
Yeah.
But for obvious reasons, you can't have animals like that roaming around through cities, and they don't like to be there either. So
I bet they don't.
we have enormous nature areas in South Africa. And a lot of farms, even other agriculture, because the animals are indigenous, especially the antelope and that sort of thing, will be there indigenously. Obviously not, rhino and elephants and such like, but our country is full of them. And if you're in any of those sorts of spaces, you can literally just walk onto it.
Awesome. Now there's another.
Go.
Now I was about to mention, because the wildlife is obviously something that people think of when they think of Africa, the continent.
Safari.
Safari, stuff like that, right? But I don't think people realize how beautiful, and I'm saying that by seeing some pictures, maybe pictures you've shown us as well. But is your seaside, right?
Yeah.
By the way, just looking at your background, are you on the seaside? Is that
I'm not, but as a so it's a very tropical city. As a crow flies, if I were to step up here, I could see the sea. It's probably about 2 kilometers from me. Yeah.
Yeah, of course you are on the seaside.
Of course I am.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, I'm on the East Coast. I'm on probably the biggest city on the East Coast of South Africa.
Yeah.
And our whole country is coastline along the bottom.
Of course, but do you have this feeling that people don't realize, like the potential when it comes to your seaside
Coast.
And is it well explored touristically, let's say?
In certain areas,
Like
the Western Cape, Cape Town's very popular. Cape Town's very popular.
Cape Town's where you have the white sharks, though, right?
Yeah, we've got them here as well. They're everywhere. Yeah, many of them.
But you just go for a swim? Is that, bro?
Like you just don't even think about it.
Yeah. Oh man, it just gives me the chills.
Yeah, no, so we've got an enormous and beautiful coastline, and it's very diverse. I think that's what people don't understand about South Africa, is the diversity of climates. I mean, it was the first day of spring 6 or 7 days ago, and we had snowfall about 3 hours from here. If I wanted to, I could have driven up there and skied.
Wow.
And yesterday I spent the whole day on the beach, and it was 28 degrees.
But this
we have it.
How high is it there for you to get snow?
We've got a mountain range called the Drakensberg Mountains, and that's where snow falls mostly. There's a few skiing spots. I think it goes very, so from the coast, goes up pretty quickly in terms
Okay.
of altitude. And
Okay.
I think it's getting up to about at least close to 4,000 meters above sea level.
All right. Yeah. No.
So, but I mean, we've obviously got the sort of tropical coast. We had then the Cape Coast is actually very Mediterranean, like a lot of the vegetation is the same. It's winter rainfall, which is obviously like Italy. Whereas here it's summer rainfall, which is quite strange. In the same country, you've got two completely different climates.
Gosh, crazy.
And we've got vast desert areas. I mean, there's areas where, you know, you're completely in a desert. We've got incredible forest regions, hundreds of thousands of hectares of just forest. We've got savanna, which is obviously the classic safari landscape. Mountain ranges. There's, in terms of geography and different climates, Africa's got easily 5 or 6 or 7 completely different climates, all in one country. Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. I
So,
mean, Brazil is no stranger for diversity, but I think you
yeah,
guys definitely beat us there, especially with the
it's
snow thing, right? You can
yeah,
really get any snow around here.
yeah. It's amazing that you can drive for 3 hours from a 28-degree day on the beach and be walking in snow. It's quite crazy.
It is quite crazy. Yeah, very nice, man.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't wanna take any more of your precious time there, man. It seems like you're in too of a nice spot to just listen to my bullshit here. But how about you? Would you consider your teaching career basically done? Have you had any other experience related to teaching once you got back home?
No, I haven't actually. I I'm just trying to think. I've taught just not in an official capacity at all. My work's keeping me a bit busy now. I've taught other people to do other things, but I I'm really glad I've done it, and I kind of have it there. So it feels like if I ever want to do it again, it would be a whole lot easier now. It's a wonderful way to submerge yourself in a country where you can't speak the language, and
how
it's yeah.
how much of your own language, now talking about English, were you able to, just to grasp to another level once you had to teach it, which is a whole different story, isn't it?
All of it. um, it's an amazing thing when you've grown up speaking a language and you don't think about it, and then you have to explain it and how it works, and it's a very different thing between understanding
And
how
you
it works and
then you
explaining that and then just doing it correctly.
and then you realize the bits that just don't make sense, and you go like, it is like that because it is like that.
Just the way it is.
Yeah, just go ahead and listen enough and you get it, right? But
Yeah.
especially being and living in a country where you are in touch with people that speak so many different languages.
Yeah.
Have you have you have you found the holy grail of learning a language? Do you think there is a one like appropriate, interesting way to do it, man? If you would approach a new language now,
Now,
knowing what
how
you
would I do
know,
it?
how would you
Yeah.
do that? So
I think if you're sincere about wanting to learn it, the key is to have multiple approaches at the same time.
100%.
So submerge yourself in it as much as possible, through television, music, ideally living in the place, but obviously that's a bit impractical. Simultaneously with kind of learning the almost like the scientific element to it, or the very structural, mechanical elements of it. And then a whole lot of balls and guts to just go at it and not hold back. That's a key element. So I think one of the things I've come to realize about language, having taught it a bit, is how it's simultaneously a very structured thing, which is important, yet at the same time requires an almost not caring at the same time as well. It's not one or the other. It's not purely formulated, and it's not purely just going with the flow. So I would say I would definitely go for a structured, very structured, fixed sort of learning approach, and then a submersion approach, and then just a practical using it approach. And then at the end of the day, if learning isn't fun, to be honest, you're not really going to embrace it. So about finding a way where you can to learn it in a capacity or through a subject or themes or a method that you really enjoy. It's like exercising. If you don't find a way of exercising that you enjoy, you're just not really going to embrace it. So that's another key element that I would say.
That is pure gold, my friend. That's something that I try to tell my students, right? You need, I mean, my job here is way more to kind of give you enough resource till you find your way into learning. Because as you know, the more I learn, the more I realize that a language can't really be taught; it can only be learned. You know. So you realize that your job as a teacher, it will be to actually show the way and maybe facilitate it a little bit by showing the perhaps the pitfalls that you don't really want your students to fall in, instead of the right thing to do, right? This is how you have to do, and this is the only way to do it, because there are 100 ways you can do it, and you need to eventually find your way and find it interesting and fun enough so you can be in touch with that language and kind of create your own immersion, right? Especially if you don't live in the country, because as you said, it's just not practical, especially nowadays, right? You got people wanting to learn English all around the world, and you might have the chance because of technology, and it's a great thing, right? You can access 100,000 like YouTube videos with different content, and find something you are actually interested in, and don't even call it studying, right? Just call it another part of your day, something you would be doing your own native language, right? But instead, the language you're trying to learn. So that is very valuable information right there.
It's a good approach.
And do you have a language that has challenged you and still is kind of a dream of yours to learn?
Italian, of course.
Would that be Italian?
Of course. Awesome. Well, I mean, if I'm going to retire and live in Trani, I should probably get a bit better at it too.
Right, man. Well, I hope you find your way into that language, that marvelous language you're trying to learn.
Cool. Thank you so much. I will. At the moment, my big thing is music, so I'm just listening to a lot of Italian music.
Awesome.
That's
gonna help you a lot. That's gonna help you a lot for sure. What are you listening to right now?
Right now,
or what were you listening to?
I have a Spotify playlist that is full of a lot of different stuff, which jumps from the summer pop hits to Andrea Bocelli to across basically all spectrums of genre that you can that you can sort of think about.
Do you remember Caparezza? Were you listening?
Yeah, of course.
Back in Italy.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's still a big one for me. Every now and then I'm listening to some.
You go back there.
It's awesome. It brings back so many memories.
Yeah, absolutely. So Yeah, I enjoy that, and of course, it brings back so many good memories just to be hearing the language. There's not a lot of Italians in South Africa,
Yeah.
so I don't even get to hear it much here. But
Well,
fortunately, we've
yeah,
yeah,
you're one call away from a world of Italians because
yeah.
you know the friends we got over there. They are amazing, right?
Yeah, of course. It was very difficult not going back there this summer. I figured out it's the first summer in at least 3 years that I haven't been back there.
Yeah.
Hopefully next summer the world will be a little bit more normal.
Yeah, and I mean, any normality will make the world way more normal than whatever happened this year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Craziest year.
Yeah.
But
Well, man, I'm sure when you
I
go back, it's gonna be double special.
yeah, there's some big birthdays happening next year, so I might have to time my arrival for some of those. We'll see.
Awesome.
Um, I'm due to have a visit with you as well, but I'm just waiting for you to be ready for that.
I know what
Anyway, I
you're
trust you'll keep
talking
me posted.
about. Yeah, you don't have to shout that out.
Okay,
uh,
earphones in.
yeah,
One of these days, I'll get an invitation, and I might
I'll
just
let you
come
know,
visit.
man. I'll let you know for sure. I mean, I still think you're not gonna really do it, but it would be insane if you did so. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
still
man.
have your T-shirt?
Of course I do. Oh, why didn't I think of that? I'm not gonna get it now. You know what?
No, don't worry about it.
I'm gonna grab this interview. I'm gonna add it right, and probably I'm gonna have to put some subtitles in certain parts because the
Yeah.
idea is actually, whoever wants to access that really grasp and understand a little bit of this cultural elements and of South
Yeah.
Africa we've discussed and everything else, right? So it's gonna take a while, but once it's done, I will post it, and with that, I will post it. I'll post the picture of the first time I
Fantastic.
worn your gift. That was an amazing gift,
Brilliant.
by the way. Dynamite. That was dynamite, bro. and you know what? I would love if you could send me one of your photographs so I can kind of spread the word on your
Okay,
work. That would be cool.
cool. I will
Yeah.
do that indeed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, man. It was such a great pleasure talking to you, my friend.
Thank you. It was a treat as always.
Yeah, you are a
And
gentleman and a scholar.
oh, bless you. And we'll do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jared. Have a
Take
good
care.
one, bro. Bye bye.